Today I'm going to be telling you about all the books I read in the month of June. I had an absolutely incredible reading month and I really needed it. I read 13 books in the month of June, the same amount that I read the month prior, but my average rating was much better at a 3.63. That is the highest average rating that I've had all year and I'm so excited about these books. I only had 2 books that were 2-star and everything else was 3-star and above. I'm just having a great time and I cannot wait to tell you about all these books. As always, we're gonna go in order from my least favorite to my most favorite, and usually I start with talking about the books that I DNF'd, but I'm kind of feeling like, and I don't know how long this will last, but I don't really want to talk about books that I DNF'd anymore, at least in these wrap-up videos. I don't feel like I have a lot of value to add when talking about them because it's mostly just like, I wasn't in the mood for this. This didn't grab my attention at the time. I didn't like this one tiny particular thing about it. And I feel like not talking about DNFs gives me a little bit more comfortability with DNFing things sometimes too, because sometimes I push through things. I'm like, oh, I feel like I need to read this so I can like give a full thought on it. I don't want to say that I DNF'd it and gave up on it, but the more I DNF, the happier I am because I'm having better reading months. So I'm just gonna skip that section and we're gonna get right into all the books that I did complete. As I said, I only had 2 2-star books this month. The first one is The Tenant by Freida McFadden. I did post a full dedicated reading blog to this book, so I won't go on about it too long here because you can go check that video out to hear my full thoughts and see my full experience with that book. I've read at least 10 books from Freida McFadden now, and I have enjoyed several of them, so that's why I keep trying them. I do think the majority now I have not enjoyed, but there have been some that are fun. They're a good palate cleanser, they're a popcorn read, they're just very easily consumable things to reinvigorate you to read when you just want something that can be really quick, have a fun twist, something to catch you off guard. Unfortunately, this one was not that. I did not love this one. It follows a couple who decides to bring a tenant into their home so they can save some money, and then it becomes like a roommates from hell situation. Story dragged on a lot. It was very boring. Kind of predicted exactly where it was going to go. Was not for me. The other 2-star I had this month was The Matchmaker by Aisha Saeed, which was unfortunate because I was looking forward to this book. It follows a matchmaker who helps people find the people that they're going to marry, and she usually goes to their weddings as well, and then things start to go awry. There is someone who is targeting her and sabotaging these weddings and for some reason coming after her, and she has to figure out who and why. I didn't love the writing style of this book. I found it not that compelling. Like, I feel like it took a long time to start getting into the targeting of things, and then the stakes just didn't feel very high. This felt extremely cozy, I guess, and I thought that it'd be a little bit higher of stakes. I like a cozy, but I want to feel a little bit of tension, a little bit of stakes. You know, there are stakes, but I'm just not feeling that fully in the tone. And then I didn't love the direction it went, how everything wrapped up in the end. It just wasn't really for me. With those out of the way, we can now get into the books that I enjoyed. First up in my 3 stars is When the Tides Held the Moon by Vanessa Vita Kelly. I got an audio copy of this through the Libro FM ALC program. It was not really on my radar, but they've been having some great picks lately, and I've been trying to be a little bit more open-minded with what I'm picking up and trying from them. And this one was really good. It is a queer historical fiction fantasy romance story that follows this Puerto Rican immigrant who is living in Coney Island in, I believe, the early 1920s. He gets commissioned to build this big steel cage tank thing, and he doesn't know why. And then he ends up getting a position to work for the sideshow, and he realizes what he got hired to do is build this cage for a merman that they were going to capture. And then he starts working for the sideshow. He's responsible for working with the merman, and they develop a romance throughout the story as well. And it puts him in this difficult situation where he loves this merman, but he doesn't want to keep him captive. It was a really beautiful story. It was a really good audiobook listen as well. I did have some complaints. That's why it's a 3-star, not a 5. I was looking for a little bit more tension and stakes. I wanted to see the man going through more inner turmoil and conflict with the position he was putting this merman in, and then the position he was in with the little bit of like a found family that he's starting to build with the other people who work in the sideshow. By the end, I feel like a lot of it felt like an inevitability in a lot of the way that things played out, rather than there being some real tension, some real sources of conflict between those people and not just like the guy who runs the sideshow and the situation that's going on. The romance also was a little bit of an insta-love, but in general, it was a very atmospheric story, and it was just something really really different from what I usually read. I Might Be in Trouble was also a surprise for me. Also gave this a 3-star, and honestly, I thought that I might pick this up and end up DNFing it. This is a book that I got with some excess Book of the Month credits that I had from skipping Book of the Month, and then I needed to purge those credits so I could finally cancel my Book of the Month subscription. I just skip so much that it's not worth it because I skip so many months and then I accumulate these credits and then I feel like I have to expend them on something, and then I'm getting books that I wouldn't normally pick up anyway, and that's like still money, you know, it's a credit you spent earlier on. So it just wasn't worth it for me anymore. That's why I decided to cancel. But this one actually did work out for me. This is a story where you're following this author who is a struggling author. He has written 2 books. His first one did well, his second one did not. He's living in New York City. He's going through a breakup. He's struggling, and then he goes on this date with this guy. It goes really well. He ends up staying the night, but in the morning when he wakes up, the guy is dead in bed beside of him. He doesn't know what to do, and so he ends up calling his literary agent, pulling her into the fold, and they decide what they're going to do and how they're going to move forward. And the book follows how they get through these shenanigans and then worrying about the consequences of this. I would say this is a dark comedy book. I think that's a good way to categorize it. It does have like tinges of a thriller or suspense novel in there as well, but I would think about it first and foremost as a dark comedy book, and there were some moments where this was funny. It's definitely a silly story. You do need to suspend your disbelief. I had fun with it because of that. The whole first half of the book, I was like, oh, okay, this is what we're doing. Like, not necessarily the way I would deal with this situation, but all right, I'll follow you through this journey. The second half of the story, I didn't feel was as strong. I do think it struggled a little bit to keep up with that momentum that it set in the first half of the story, but I had a good time with it, especially because I was going into it not really knowing anything and not really expecting much from it. When you hear a book with this premise, you think, okay, it'll have a great opening scene, but then where's it going to go with that story? And I do think it went places, it had things to do. It did keep up that intrigue for longer than I thought it would, and it was really a page turner. I feel like it read really quickly, so if it sounds interesting to you, I would recommend picking it up and giving it a try. Next up, going in order of my ratings, would be Adrift and Currents Clean and Clear, which is the 10th book in the Wayward Children series, but later I need to talk about the 9th book in the Wayward Children series, Misladen Parts Half Known, which I give a higher rating, and I hate when that happens and it confuses my brain. So I'm just going to talk about both of them here in this section. I feel like it works to talk about them together anyways because they're the 9th and the 10th book in a series. I don't really want to go into details of what they're about and specific reviews of them because that's only going to apply to a particular set of people who have made it this far in the series. And I do feel like every time I talk about these books, I generally just say anyway, like, I like the series. I think it's really fun. It's a portal fantasy series about these kids who go to other worlds. They come back. They wish they could go to the other world. Some books follow them in the real world. Some books follow them in the portal world. There's kind of quest stories that go throughout the series. There's individual stories that go to other worlds. They alternate in the series which ones they are. And I think that pretty much gets the job done for talking about these books. The 9th book was a quest story, and I used to not enjoy the quest ones as much, but as the story develops, as I understand these characters more, I love seeing them together. So I had a really good time with this. I gave it a 4-star. And then Adrift and Currents Clean and Clear, the 10th book. This is an individual's story where they're going to their other world. You see their origin story and how they got to their other world. This one I gave a 3-star, and it is one of my least favorites in the series. It's probably my second least favorite after Beneath the Sugar Sky. I like the character in this one, Nadia, and seeing the representation about disability and adoption. I love how Shauna Maguire just takes all these different concepts of how kids could be made to feel as other and has such a diverse range of those experiences that she showcases throughout the series. And then it maps perfectly with like the worlds they go to and the experiences that they have. I think it's always really well done, but this one in particular I felt was really slow paced. It really took a long time to get where it was going, then all of a sudden it was over. I also found the world a little bit confusing. This is a world that's like under the water, and I got it, but it was a little bit difficult to visualize. So not my favorite, but I did still enjoy it. And now I am fully caught up on the series, which is very exciting. The next book will be out in January, and I will be able to pick it up with everyone else and not feel FOMO anymore because now I'm all caught up, which is great. Next up is Flirting Lessons by Jasmine Guillory, which I gave a 3.5-star rating to. This is the first thing that I've read from this author, so I was unaccustomed to her style, and I will say the critiques of the things I didn't like in the story were the writing style. It did feel a little bit stilted to me. The dialogue felt a little bit like dialogue written on a page versus things that people would say. The exposition between dialogue and everything just felt a little bit stiff to me, but once I got past all of that, I did get very consumed in the romance romance going on between these two characters. And this was a book where I found myself thinking about these characters when I had walked away from the book. Anytime I would sit it down later in the day, I'd find myself thinking about them and wanting to see what would happen next. I'd be excited to pick the book back up, which is always a really good sign of a really good and captivating book. This is a sapphic romance that follows Taylor, who is this woman who is super hot and she's dated a lot. She's known to just be a really great flirt, and she kind of goes through women really quickly. And then Avery, who's been in this relationship with a man for a really long time, but they just broke up, and she's only ever dated men, but she wants to now feel more confident in being able to start dating women because she is attracted to women. And in this story, Taylor ends up coaching Avery and giving her these flirting lessons, but then of course inevitably they end up falling in love as well. I think this might be the first romance that I've read with this trope of someone teaching someone else how to flirt, and it worked really well for me. I really liked the tension that was developing between them. That tension broke really well when we got to that moment as well. And these are such polar opposite types of people, but it worked really well to see how they challenged one another and how that forced each other to grow, which I also really like seeing in romance, is seeing two people who are able to bring out different sides in the other one. So I think this is probably a trope that I need to explore more because I had a really good time with it. I feel like I've been sitting up so straight and I just want to relax a little bit, but then I have to bring the camera down and I didn't want to freak you out. That's better. Next up is The Unmaking of June Farrow by Adrienne Young. I ended up giving this book a 3.75 rating, and I do not typically get that specific. I usually just do full and half stars because I usually don't find that I need to get that specific, then it just overcomplicates things. I'd rather just round up in most cases, but this felt so much like it wasn't quite a 4, but it was better than a 3.5 to me that I gave it a 3.75. In this story, we're following this woman named June Farrow, and all the women in her family have this curse that has been carried around through them. After the death of her grandmother, June starts to have her own symptoms and begins to explore and understand what this curse is. And throughout the story, she goes through a magical type of experience that ends up leading to her having to make some difficult decisions about her life after she learns everything that's going on and learns some things about her own past and her own future. There were so many things about this book that I thought were really great. It has great atmosphere. It had great writing. I loved the concept. I loved the exploration of it. I loved the characters. I love following things going on in the matrilineal line of a family. It's set in Western North Carolina. I love Western North Carolina. So many good things. The issues that I had with it is I just wanted more. And I don't want to give too much away about this. I don't want to go into the spoilers of it all. But the book really makes you want to see something else happen. It makes you want to go somewhere else. It makes you want to explore this other section of the story. And I thought that we would explore that more fully. And the more I read, and I could tell where the pacing of the story was going and how much was left of the story, I was like, oh no, are we not going to get that? That's really interesting. And we don't go in depth on the thing that I wanted us to, and that I feel like I really needed to see in order to feel fully convinced of the ending of this book. And if it would have done that, it could have been a 5-star book. It could have been great. So I think that's what has me so particular on it too, because I'm like, I can see the potential in what this could have been. It could have been one of the best books I've ever read, but it just didn't quite go where I needed it to go to do that. It is still great, and this is the first thing I've read from this author, and I've been looking into some of her other books, and I think she could just be an author for me that even if they're not my favorite books of all time, they're things that I could enjoy quite a bit because of the themes that she explores and the way she does like light magic within her stories, which is something that I really like. I liked her writing style. It seems like she's gonna be a really atmospheric writer. So I imagine I'll check out more from her in the future. This was also one of those books that I got with Book of the Month credits and, you know, heard good things about, so expected good things out of it, but it wasn't the top of my radar. It wasn't the top of my TBR. It wasn't something I would have picked up if I hadn't had to use those credits somehow, and it worked out better than I thought it would. So that's always nice too. Now going into my 4 stars, first up is The Starving Saints by Caitlin Starling. This is definitely one of those books that you will either like or you will be super frustrated by, because this book does not explain anything. This is a queer medieval fantasy horror story that is set at this castle that has been under siege for 6 months. So everyone's locked into the castle and everyone's starting to starve because they're running out of food. And then one day, these saints that they all worship and pray to suddenly appear, and they come promising that they'll be able to make everything okay and you won't be starving and, you know, everything will be wonderful as long as you just worship us in return. And then in the story, you're following 3 different women who are going through different experiences, who have different backgrounds, and they're all receiving the saints in a slightly different way and navigating that. And then they do end up coming together and their paths intersect in different ways as well. You might be wondering, when and where is this book set? What are these saints? How do women fit into this civilization? How do any of the magic systems work? What are the rules? You don't really find those things out. And so this could be an incredibly frustrating book to someone who wants that world building, who wants things to make sense. This book is more of a feeling than it is a detailed story. It's very atmospheric. It feels like a fever dream. It is the exact perfect representation of just having a really crazy nightmare where you're jumping in different bodies and like you're one person, then suddenly you're a different person. And there's this weird thing happening, but you're not really questioning it because that's just how dreams work, because these things are just happening. You're like, yeah, that's what's happening. These are the rules now. Oh, all of a sudden there's this other thing. Yeah, that makes sense. I'm going to go on and deal with that now. And that does not always work for me either. Sometimes I find those books to be really frustrating, but this one I just really enjoyed. I have read one book from Caitlin Starling in the past. I read Last to Leave the Room, and I think I gave that a 3.5 star rating. That similarly had a cool concept. It was about doppelgangers. It was very weird and atmospheric and dreamlike, and I wasn't loving that then. So I don't know if maybe Caitlin Starling's books have more to do with if you find the setting to be cool, like if it feels like a dream you would like to have, or if it feels like a dream that maybe you're not the most into. I am interested to explore more from this author now, having read 2 of their books and then having this experience that I really liked. I did also listen to this as an audiobook through the Libro FM ALC program, and I liked the audiobook. I liked the narrator a lot. It was a little bit tricky to keep up with which perspective you were in because it's just one narrator reading all these 3 different perspectives, but once you got your way into the story and you understood who each character was, then it was fine and easy to get into. But I do always like multiple POVs if you can get multiple narrators if you can. But it was a good time, and if you find those concepts to be interesting and you think that you would like a fever dream-like experience, then I would say give it a try. If you start it and you're hating it, it's gonna just be that, you know? So do with that information what you will. My next 4-star is Finding Grace by Loretta Rothschild. I had this sent to me as an early copy from the publisher. It looks like it was published June 10th. And this is a literary fiction book that I did not know much about at the time of receiving it. The only thing that I'd really heard about it was that it had a really surprising first chapter, but I chose not to look into it that much. I was like, okay, surprising first chapter, I'll read it, see if it grips me, see if I find myself wanting to explore more of the story. And this did definitely have a shocking first chapter. Even knowing it was going to be surprising, it still surprised me. But I do think hearing that and reading this first chapter and seeing how shocking it is maybe doesn't set you up the best for the type of story this is and what this is going to be, because this is a very slow, lingering, introspective kind of story that is really just following this one character going through a very difficult moral and ethical dilemma. The book wants to surprise you based on how the synopsis is laid out. It doesn't want you fully to understand what's happening in this book, so I'll respect that and I won't fully go into the details of what this book is about in terms of the details of what's happening in the story, but it's about that. It's about the ethical dilemma. It's about sitting with these characters who are morally gray, who you may or may not be agreeing with in certain situations, and wondering what you would do in those situations. I think it'd be a great book club book for that reason, because you could easily sit and talk about what you would do if you were this character, if you were a friend of this character, how you would handle this difficult situation. And this book also does a pretty unique thing in terms of the perspective through which the story is told, and doing that in a very intentional way to reflect some things about grief and how that lingers with us. And so I thought that was really cool. The reason this is a 4-star, not a 5-star, maybe has to do a bit with how slow paced it is. And it's like, well, maybe more plot could have happened, you know? It is just a really slow, lingering type of book. And then the way things ended did kind of catch me off guard a little bit too, because the whole thing's sort of one style and tone of book, and I wasn't expecting it to do what it did. I did really like it. I do think it had great writing. These characters felt really well-rounded to me, and it made me think. And I like when a book makes me think, so I had a good time with it. Now going into my 5-star reads of the month, I had 2, and the first one is Heat of the Everflame by Penn Cole. This is the 3rd book in the Kindred's Curse saga. Since it's the 3rd book in a series, I won't go too in depth on it here in this wrap up. I'll just generally talk about the series. The 1st book in the series, Spark of the Everflame, I gave a 4-star, and then the 2nd book and this 3rd book, I gave both of those a 5-star. I have complaints about this book though. It was too long. It was too long. It needed to be edited down. I'm pretty sure this was a Kindle Unlimited series first, and Kindle Unlimited stories tend to be really long. I think that probably has to do with the payment structure for authors in Kindle Unlimited. Like, I'm pretty sure authors get paid for number of pages read versus number of books read in the Kindle Unlimited platform. So it makes sense that authors do end up writing more and don't feel as inclined to edit and cut things down as people do in the traditional publishing space, where the more words is more paper and more expensive to print, and so they really encourage editing things down. I think that's just the nature of the industry. This would have been a stronger book if it was edited down, but I still loved it. I really like the series. I like these characters. I like watching your main character grow throughout the series and the trials that she goes through. It is a slow burn romance. I love slow burn romances. I love to see yearning. I love to see the tension. Even though it should be edited down and it'd be a stronger book for that, I would read it if it was longer because I just like this series. I'm really invested in it. Of course, like all of her books, it ends on this huge cliffhanger, and I desperately need the 4th book, and I don't know if that's coming later this year or if it's gonna come next year. She doesn't know when it's coming out, but whenever it does come out, I will be there, first in line, ready to pick it up and read it. And my other 5-star read of the month is What Hunger by Catherine Dang. This is a coming-of-age horror story that I was not expecting to love as much as I did for several reasons. 1, I just haven't been loving horror as much this year. 2, these books that seem to hint towards cannibalism usually just aren't my favorite either for some reason. I don't have anything, I was gonna say I don't have anything against cannibalism. I do have things against cannibalism. But like, I don't have anything against reading about it in horror and the themes that it explores, but they just usually aren't like my favorite theme to explore for some reason. But this book wasn't exactly what I thought that it would be. In the story, you're following this 14-year-old girl named Ronnie, who is the child of Vietnamese immigrants. You're following her the summer before she goes off to high school and the summer before her older brother goes off to college. The story kicks off at the beginning of that summer when a tragedy happens, and it follows her through the course of the next couple of months and going onward as she and her family are grieving and all dealing with that in different ways. Her particular method is by developing a new fixation on meat, wanting to eat raw meat in particular. And I think this book was just so great. It reminded me a lot of The Eyes Are the Best Part, which is a book that I know a lot of people really loved. I just didn't love that one as much for some reason. I don't even remember exactly what critiques I had of it, but it just wasn't a 5-star for me. This book reminded me a lot of the things that were going on in that story, but this one just resonated with me really deeply. I think it had some really apt portrayals of grief. It also explores generational trauma. It also just explores a lot of things around coming of age as a girl, developing that female rage. So many things that just make you so mad. And I think it did a really good job too of showing what it feels like to be around this age, where you're starting to get more exposure to adults and you're starting to observe things about adults in a different way, and you're coming to understand the nuances in adults a little bit differently, and you're just like looking at them as people for the first time. I just feel like everything about it resonated with me so much. I thought the writing was so great. I do think this is this author's 2nd novel. Previously she wrote Nice Girls, which I think is a thriller book that I haven't really looked into. It seems like this is quite different from the novel she wrote before. I could be wrong about that, but if she does more in this vein, I definitely think this is an author that I could really enjoy more from in the future. Hello, I'm editing this video and somehow realized I forgot to include Not in Love, another 5-star read I had this month, and every force in the universe has been against me telling you this. I filmed a clip on my phone because I was like, quality doesn't matter, I'll just film it on my phone, airdrop it to my laptop while I'm editing. It would not airdrop. I restarted my phone, I restarted my computer, I tried to send it as a text message. My text then wouldn't open on my laptop. Then it did open, but it wouldn't download. Then I'm like, fine, I'll just open my camera, do it on my SD card. It'll take longer, but whatever. Then my battery's dead on my camera. Everything has conspired against me to tell you about this 5-star book. Anyways, I loved it. I've read several Allie Hazelwood books now. I'm liking them more and more as I go. This one is sort of like a forbidden romance, secret affair type of story between 2 people.
They start a casual situationship. It turns into something more. I had a really good time with it. I wanted to pick it up because I wanted to read Problematic Summer Romance, and I realized this actually came first because they're like a spin-off of different characters. So I do plan on picking up Problematic Summer Romance soon. For the love of God, I hope this clip makes it to my computer.
So that's it for all the books I read in the month of June. Let me know down below if you've read any of these books and what you thought about them, or let me know if I convinced you to pick any of them up. But that is it for me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video. Bye.